if no one else has anything pressing to share, I'd like to just give you a little background on Lynne's organization. So let me pause, and if there's any last minute sharings that want to happen. Okay. So Lynne informed me earlier that there are 5,000 members in the Elders Action Network. Their message is one earth, one humanity, one future. And it's about supporting elders' talents and experiences that go untapped, and how much of our collective wisdom that has been gained over decades prior to this generation may fallow. And the premise is that this is an unfortunate waste of invaluable human resources that really could go into the solutions and the enhancement of numerous serious societal and environmental problems. As elders, we have the benefits of time, talent, experience, and know-how to guide making the needed transformations. Elders become catalysts of a social movement in which all generations collaborate in evolving changes for our common betterment. In so doing, we find a new and rewarding sense of meaning in our lives, and we create a new elder culture in the process. And they have numerous offerings, including community conversations and book study groups and climate action. And the rest is for Lynne to fill us in with. John, will you do the introduction?
Actually, I am.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah. What an interesting thing that there's so many organizations that are now springing up with our generation. I had a little fracas with somebody on Instagram who had a joke about, I think it was about race, but anyway, it was just calling somebody a grandpa, you know, and there was a while there where people were calling boomers. It came from something that happened in New Zealand, where there's all this negativity. I find it interesting because we also now are a group that they're trying to keep from getting the virus, because we're fragile, and yet here we are still, you know, the largest group of older people over age 60 that the world has ever had. And so here we are now with the Elders Action Group and then our group, Creation in Crisis, that are beginning to offer this as a gift to the world. And one of the gifts to the world surely must be Lynne Isler. She has done so much work and brought so many people along to see that this is not a time to rock in our chairs, but to go out and, you know, rock the world. So Lynne Isler became an elder activist in her 60s. She's motivated by the love for her children and the beauty of our world. And she serves as president of Elders Action Network, through which she is building a movement of elders addressing the social and environmental issues of our time. She now offers a workshop series called Becoming a Vibrant Elders in Our Evolving World, based upon the teachings of Joanna Macy and Rabbi Schachter. She also teaches in the Yerusha Saging Mentorship Program. And her website, elderactivist.org, was designed to inspire, educate, and support elders to create a thriving and just world for future generations. Lynne lives in Philadelphia with her partner, Mordecai Liebling. Together they have 5 children and brand new granddaughter. We are really glad to have you here today, Lynne, and to hear what you can teach us.
Hey.
Good. Well, welcome, Lynne. I will chime in and say we are so honored to have you with us today and excited. And I apologize for our spelling error. If we had a budget on the staff, these things would never happen.
That's right.
Forward and onward. Penny gave us and Gail gave us a nice background about you and the Elders Action Network. And I met actually many of you at the first conference, and I've always been impressed with John Sorensen's vision and his action orientation. Right. This is not a guy for sitting around. But so I want to start by just asking you, how did you get involved with them, and what are the most important activities and values do they represent in your own words?
Great. John, I think I might have met you at a Saging International Conference,
That too,
maybe back in
yes.
Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I met John Sorensen and his wife Sue at that point as well, and some of the early members of Elders Climate Action. And at that point, I was really excited to meet them. I had not known anybody else in this country that had an agenda of wanting elders to become activists and speak up for the needs and the welfare of future generations. There's a lot of organizations at that time, and this was about 6-8 years ago, where elders advocate on behalf of things that are important to elders, ageism or issues of Medicare or nursing homes or Social Security or other issues along those lines. But there have not been many where elders advocated for future generations. And especially as a younger elder, I was, it was 8-10 years ago, I knew that this was really important. And I wanted to have an organization, but I didn't want to run an organization. And meeting John and his vision, I went, all right, this is the people to work with. So we've been working together since then. That's that part of the story.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We'd like to kind of get into your life and your personal activism. And oh, by the way, your articles in Turning Point Journal and Pass It On and the Life Planning Network have just been beautiful and eloquent, and they speak so much from your own soul and your own activist feelings and mentality. I really would encourage everybody to read those, and maybe we can post them on the website so that people have access to them. But anyway, formative influences. What influences over your life nurtured and awakened this passion for social justice and for sacred activism?
Well, there's probably a few things. So first of all, I think what has been mentioned here is I became active in this idea of conscious eldering when I was turning 40. And I met Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, and I was just taken with his ideas of how do we live in this world? And how do I, as a Jewish person, find meaning in my Jewish tradition and renew it? How do I bring it into the contemporary world? And he was a master. He was an amazing man who influenced many, like so many people in terms of Jewish practice and the whole trajectory of Jewish practice in many ways. And I was very fortunate that I was able to work with him as he wanted to develop work on what he called spiritual eldering. And that was when he was turning 60 in his early 60s, and he was wondering about, there's no models for growing older now. There's no models for becoming an elder. We only have people that grow old and end up in a nursing home and diminish over time. There's no models of wisdom. There's no models of what we can be. There used to be models, but there aren't any longer. So we developed this work of spiritual eldering that became the Saging Institute. And so at a very young age, I got to see and be, I call marinated in the juices of what growing older could be about. Actually at the point where you might begin to think about growing older when you're 40, but you certainly aren't anywhere there. And of course, as I grew older through my 50s and such, and lost my parents and went through many of the more common experiences, I began to utilize this information for my personal growth. What turned me towards activism was two things. My husband is an activist. My husband has always been an activist. I'd always been kind of an edgy person and had thoughts about medical care and public health and midwifery and a lot of the social issues we dealt with in the 60s and 70s and 80s and beyond. But I hadn't been out there in Congress or in the streets or any of that kind of stuff. But I began to feel this discomfort about what was happening to our world. 10 years ago, when we started hearing more and more commonplace about climate change and environmental issues and what was going on in the world, it was such an uncomfortable feeling to have to deal with this when I hadn't really thought about it in such a systemic way before. So I did a bit of research, got very involved with the Pachamama Alliance, and then learned about Joanna Macy's work, and then listened to my teenage daughter tell me, the world is such a mess. I wish I had grown up in the 50s. I am miserable. I can't see a future.
Wow.
And she's a very sensitive young woman, still feels a lot of that. And I realized I had to get in there and start getting more active in changing the issues that I saw in the world. I couldn't just leave it for others to do. And of course, I didn't have to make dinners anymore, and I didn't have to be home and do homework, and I wasn't driving anybody anywhere. I had free time. I had the time to do with my life as I wanted and could do. So one of the first things I did was I got arrested. I went to Washington with my husband and a group of people that were clergy involved in climate change. And this was 6 or 7 years ago. And we stood outside of the White House, and we were demanding change in terms of climate issues. And they told us to leave, and we had to stand there. And as we got arrested, we were singing, and I was looking at the clouds in the sky, and what a beautiful day it was. And I was surrounded by clergy. And I just knew this is what was important to be doing. This is really what was important to be doing. So that was my initiation.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful story. It's very moving in just of itself. Yeah. Wow. Seems
so like I think singing's very important.
Singing is. Yeah, you can lead us in a song if you ever feel like it.
Okay, I'll wait and I'll come up with one.
You know, it occurs to me that everybody that ever worked with Rabbi Schachter Shalomi has a favorite story of something that happened between them. Do you have a favorite story?
Oh, there's so many stories.
I know, that's the problem.
Right. Isn't that funny? I can't think of a favorite story. All I hear is his voice in my head going, Lynn Laban, Lynn Laban. And so Laban is like love. It's Yiddish. It means love. So Lynn love. And that was what I'll tell you a story now. That was how he approached everybody, with a great deal of love. So one of the things I learned from him is we worked very closely together for 8 years, like in the same office, working very closely in developing materials and doing workshops, and traveled a great deal together. And we're in a restaurant in the early days, and we're ordering, it could have been a diner, and the waitress comes by and he says, you know, hello, and what's your name? Hello, and my name is Zalman. I'm really glad you're here today. Thank you. And he taught me was how we wanted to get in relationship with people and honor who they were and recognize their name, and always come from that sense of gratitude and relationship. So that's one of the things I've learned from him, which I was very grateful for.
What an enduring gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to talk now about your experience at Standing Rock, which, I mean, it has to be so emblematic of your personal commitment to sacred activism. And you must be so gratified that the courts just recently ruled that the Dakota Access Pipeline was in violation of all these key environmental laws. I mean, how powerful to have that finally come to fruition. But anyway, walk us through your involvement at Standing Rock. How did you hear the call, you know, and how did you decide to answer the call, and how long were you there? What was it like?
Okay. I think I was there for about 8 days, and it was actually very cold, colder than I expected. How we heard the call was, of course, we had been hearing about this. My husband's a rabbi, and he teaches at that point, he was still teaching in a rabbinical seminary. And he taught a lot about social justice. And one of his students was a youngish rabbinical student that had worked on that reservation, on the Standing Rock Reservation, 6 or 7 years previously. And she had been in touch with people on the reservations who were saying, please come and stand with us. Please come and help us. We want rabbis there. We want elders there. We want people there to be there with us. And so we realized we had the time and the ability to go, and made the travel arrangements and went there. So it felt like we had a call, a moral call, to come and be there and be with the people in Standing Rock. We did not know what to expect at all. And so a lot of what we did was, I would say, observation. Really witnessing what was happening in that community. There's always a fire going, the people that tended the fires, there were always elders standing by the fire. There were daily community meetings where information was given, but there was so much attentiveness to the elders. Of course, all the food was cooked most of it was cooked in community kitchens. And then when the food was ready, they bring it out to the elders and they'd serve the elders first. All the elders that were sitting around the fire, all the elders that were there that needed to be served. And, you know, we give a lot of, well, let me say it this way. When I was a young person, and I was on the train or the subway in Brooklyn, and somebody got on the train and they were older than me, my mother taught me to get up and give them my seat. It doesn't happen very much anymore. It's happened when I've traveled in other countries, very much in other countries, but it doesn't happen very much here. I felt that kind of respect and also caring for elders. Not all elders deserve respect as being wise, but they certainly are entitled to our caring. And that's something I learned too. And I've learned that from one of my friends that I met at Standing Rock, that as you grow older, everybody's called an elder, even if they don't act like an elder, even if they're the drunk in their community, right? Because those elders exist also. And how do we fit them into the schemata of elders? Just and what honor do we give to them? So they get a certain honor too. There's a different honor that's reserved for those that can really be seen as leaders in the community. And I noticed and I learned about this at Standing Rock and in a couple other places as well. So I think we talked a little bit about what is an elder, and in some of these indigenous communities, an elder is a person who through their life has been shown to stand for and with the community and use their energy to responsibly serve the community. So that there's a job in the community, you know, the person that does it in their 30s and 40s, they might be called upon in their 40s and 50s for advice, because people have noticed that they have been able to endure through the years and stand in for the community and do what's needed in the community and be responsible and uphold the values, whatever those values of this tradition or this community might be. So that is part of what an elder is. It's a person who has served the community in their lifetime, and so who then could be expected to continue to serve the community with whatever wisdom or tradition and perspective they might have in their elder years.
I love what you were saying about even, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just realized I went off on a tangent. So what else?
Tangents are the best part of the show.
Okay.
I was touched by what you were saying about even an elder who has not acted like a one throughout his life. Calling him an elder and treating him as an elder, which seemed to me would bring forth something inside him that reminds him that he does have a place in the world, and that no matter how he's lived his life, he's learned numerous lessons and probably has much to teach, and let's bring them all in.
Right.
Yeah. So while you were in Standing Rock, you worked in Rose's kitchen, I learned from the articles, and she actually taught you a lot. Can you say something about her and what she taught you about? Well, you were beginning actually talking about Native culture and moral value.
Right. Well, actually, Rose became a friend of mine, and I wrote a whole story about her. I don't know where it is right now, interviewing her about elders in their communities. I think what I learned from Rose is how we honor and care for people. And even if it's a lot of work, or even if we don't know who they are, or they can't respond well, that is our responsibility. And, you know, maybe we can bring it into this time right now, in this virus time, how important it is to care for other people and to care for ourselves. I think a lot right now about why it's important for me to stay healthy is to be one less person for the medical care practitioners to care for. Like that's almost feels like a responsibility, that I not be somebody end up in a hospital needing care or needing a ventilator, that they even have to make a decision on who gets that ventilator. I can stay home. I don't need to work. I don't need to get out of the house. I need to stay home.
I don't, yeah, I can avoid being careless in a way that takes
Exactly.
something away from people who need it.
Exactly. You know, I might have this urge to go out and shop, or this urge to go do something I want to do. And I really need to like rein it in and say, not now. Right now, I'm staying safe for my own self and for my safety and other people's safety. So that's a little bit of that. Thinking about ourselves as not being individuals, but ourselves within the web of our community, and how we have to serve each other in that way. And
you use a phrase, the moral voice of an elder. Feels like it's really it kind of resonates with what you're talking about and what it makes me feel. What are your words about that? The moral voice of an elder.
Yeah. So I attribute that to my husband. You know, as a rabbi, my husband's called upon many times for the moral voice of the rabbi about his experience at Standing Rock, or his experience in regards to a strike in the city or anything. Rabbi, what can you say to us? And where's your moral voice? What can you say to us from your teaching or tradition? From your teaching and tradition, and I think that elders have that same moral voice. We have a teaching and we have a tradition. And our tradition is our age, our many years of experience, and what I call our durative long-term view. So at 70 years, I have 70 years of perspective that I hopefully will bring when I'm faced with a question or an issue or anything that I am encountering. That is very different than the 26 years of perspective that my daughter has. You know, it's just wider and broader. So that long range perspective is a value, very much a value. And recently I've begun to expand that perspective a lot more. So Joanna Macy talks about deep time, that our ancestors are here with us right now.
Yes.
They're rooting for us. They loved us. Their ancestors loved us into being. We came forth from the love of others. And, you know, that is within us. When I recognize that I have a certain personality trait, like I'm actually a little bit of a positive person. Well, so was my mother. And I bet you my grandmother was also. And maybe my great-grandmother was. I don't even barely know her name. I certainly never met her. My grandmother was old when I was born. And my great-great-grandmother. So do I have this positivity because it's been handed down through these generations? I don't even know, but I know that it comes from my ancestors.
Do you feel their presence and their voice in or around you as you move into this time?
Sometimes. You know, I read some of your writings in the last few days, John, and I was really intrigued with the idea of being a mystic. I never described myself as a mystic. I said to my husband today, I never use these words. He says, what are you talking about? Half of your friends are mystics, but they're not my language. But I think that it's true. But when I think that there is a mystical ancestry, right? Aren't they all speaking through us? Yeah. And not only them, but how about the future ones? Joanna Macy says they are calling us to be the best that we can be. They're calling to us in the future, say, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. We want to come forth. We want to come forth into a healthy, thriving, just world. Do it. Just find out what's the right thing and do it. We have to listen to those unborn ones as well as our ancestors. Yeah. And that's what a perspective that is to walk around. So when I get into my mystical space, yes, I can feel that.
Well, you know, what I've learned is that I've spent a lot of time with Ira Progoff on the intensive journal workshop, and you can dialogue with all these people.
Oh, absolutely.
Surprise what comes out, and they teach you. It's not just, I wonder what they're going to say, they say it.
Right.
So that's
right.
very exciting.
So one of the things I like to do is I like to figure out, like, what are the indigenous roots of my Jewish practice, of my Jewish tradition? You know, and certainly I got part of that from Reb Zalman, because he really played with this stuff so much. So there's a Jewish prayer, the Amidah, which is a part of most Jewish prayer services. It's a standing prayer. It's usually done, half of it's done in quiet, in contemplation. And it starts off, so blessed are you, the source of all life, and our ancestors. And it goes through all the mothers and fathers, the founding mothers and fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph, and Leah, Rebecca, Rachel, Rivka, and I'm forgetting one of them. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, the first prayer tells us to link up with our ancestors and be grateful for our ancestors, to bring them to mind. And it's not just the founding ancestors. I need to think about my ancestors. I need to think about my grandparents and great-grandparents and all those whose names I don't even know. This is my lineage. What have I received from them? And this is a moment to be in that reflection. So I love playing with that stuff now.
Wow. Beautiful. Do you have a particular practice or belief that you go to and when times are hard?
Sure. You know, I'm very grateful for a lot of song and liturgy that I can be with myself. I certainly have a meditation practice, but that is sometimes very challenging when I'm really troubled. It's hard to get there. You know, being out in the backyard and being surrounded by the birds, going out first thing in the morning and gardening and listening to the birds just go wild. It's a really wonderful thing. Right now, I'm watching 2 cardinals in my backyard that are very young, and they're just nuts. It's very nuts. It's nice. It's fun to watch them.
You really can appreciate the native point of view, that they're all of our brothers, sisters, friends, and have equal rights to their nationhood and to the way of their life. And to be clear, we are not the VIPs on this planet, and that's why we're in so much trouble.
That's exactly why. Okay, so we're supposed to talk about activism. So let me tell you an activist story.
Go for it.
There's an activist in Australia, I believe it's Australia, his name is John Seed. And he has worked a lot with, okay, so she head's nodding, great. And he was doing a protest, an act in trying to stop these bulldozers from cutting down this rainforest. And these are like big bulldozers. These are the ones that are like 30 feet high, they're like 3 stories high. It's not the little ones, this are, you know, and he's standing there in front of this bulldozer with the forest and the trees behind him, the bulldozer in front of him, and he's saying to himself, what am I doing? Like, who do I think I am? Like, who am I? Who do I possibly could be to stand here, this little puny person, this huge thing? And he got, I am the earth speaking in the form of a human.
Mm.
Oh, nice.
Right? So I've been working with that for about 7 or 8 years. What does it mean to be the earth speaking in the form of a human? Right? And so there are moments when I'm in spiritual practice and I'm outdoors, when I just imagine myself with roots going into earth, and that I am earth. I am earth standing in the form of a human. And if I open my eyes and look around, I can see, oh yeah, there's tree, and there's tomato, and there's daffodil, or what, you know, actually I don't get daffodils and tomatoes at the same time, but that sense that we are all earth in the form of who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's my greatest spiritual teaching these days, John.
That's rich.
I love Jewish practice, but earth herself is like.
Yeah. Our pain for the earth is the earth's pain. And,
Yes.
and so when we feel it, we are in creation speaking in sorrow and anger and frustration.
It is so great. It is so great. It is so good. So if we can feel, as you say, that if we can feel the pain that we have now for people who have lost their lives or people that are needing, you know, who are suffering in this moment from this virus, that is earth suffering too. That is the water suffering. That is the air suffering. That's all the suffering that can be out in the world. And how do we allow ourselves to really connect with that suffering?
Yeah.
John Macy says that when we honor our pain, we honor our humanity, our compassionate nature of how we connect with and feel for other life.
I like Andrew Harvey's phrase, you follow your heart break. Nice to be, when you look, it just brings you to tears, and that's where you come from that place.
Right.
So is the Elders Action Network wrestling with responses to the coronavirus? Are you guys doing, or are the discussion groups coming up with interesting ideas, or?
Well, you know, we're an organization that does a lot we do almost everything online via Zoom. So we have been continuing our groups as we've been doing. We have a couple of, twice a week now, we have kind of just talk and share conversation sessions for people to come check in. So if people are alone or have things that they're feeling or ideas they don't have a place to share it, they can come online to one of our sessions twice a week. We are, you know, certainly looking at the virus in terms of regenerative, sustainable living. And, you know, it's kind of too soon to know, isn't it?
No, it's about intuition, I think, now. What are your ideas? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really curious what we're going to learn from this and what we are learning from it.
Yeah.
It's like I want to ask you also, what are we learning from it as elders? You know?
That's a great question for us to get into the discussion with.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to say or add or express before we open it up for
open it up. Let's see what people want to say or questions.
Gail, I hand the baton back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. What I'm going to do is unmute everybody, and hopefully people will take care of their background noise. What you think we can't hear, we can. Just want to make sure you know that. Okay, so you should be, everybody's unmuted. And then I think the best way is, I'd like where Penny had everybody raising their hand. Can you say how to do that again, Penny?
Harriet's doing it.
Oh, that's a nice, yeah, that's very good. Straightforward, very straightforward. But I can't see, to call on you, I can't see everybody. So that's why if we have this way of doing it within Zoom. Is that not right, Penny Andrews? Penny,
well, if you...
Well, we'll just start and hope it works.
Yeah, we're all unmuted, so just say, I'm ready. Harriet, it sounds like you're ready.
We'll just okay, go, Harriet.
Thank you. This dialogue has been very rich for me. There are a couple of things. When I studied with Malidoma and Sobonfu Some, they absolutely, the ancestors are waiting for you to ask for their help.
Thank you.
This, you know, it was so clear. So when you talk about, because we are the ancestors, we wouldn't be here if we weren't the ancestors. So this notion of the future ancestors, speaking with them is very fascinating. Just before the pandemic started, I joined an elder group and we were exploring the notion of rituals of elderhood. You know, that, you know, in all indigenous cultures in particular, at adolescence, you do a ritual. And so what does a ritual for accepting elderhood and our responsibility as elders? Because it's absolutely true that we have wisdom to share and we have so much to learn from these youngins about the technology.
Yeah.
So I'm just appreciating what has been said and honoring what really, what does it mean at this time and the time after this time as elders? What is our responsibility now, and what is our responsibility when we come through this? Because it is a wake-up call. It is a paradigm shift. And I only see good coming from it, even though there are losses and sacrifices and grief. This is just a part of the birthing process for me, to the light, whatever the light looks like. And as elders, we have a responsibility to usher that in, to help usher that in community, in collaboration, etc. So I'm finished.
Harriet, your words warm my heart, because I spent time in the woods with Maladoma at the Mendocino men's gatherings. I love that man. He had so much to teach. We were floored every time he spoke. Yeah. Thank you for bringing him up.
So I want to share something in response that you said a couple things. One was about our responsibility in relationship to younger people. And then you said their technology. And that is absolutely true. There's so much we have to learn from them about how to be in the world. But I think in this day now, we also have to listen to their concerns for the future, especially yes. the young activists. Yes. They are so clearly saying, this is our future and we can't find it. And we have to demand, we are demanding climate change, that we work on climate change issues, right? And that is their moral voice. You ask about a moral voice. That is their moral voice. Absolutely. Saying we must have a future. We must do that. So I just think that's really important. Yeah.
Ready? Okay. The thing I think I bring to this conversation this time, as an elder, I now have the evolutionary story. And it really does change for me my outlook, my perception, my relationship to the world's suffering right now. Recently, I was lucky enough to be in an 11th century church and to see the largest collection of art, votive art. Now, I'm a Protestant. That was new to me, and it was a wonderful discovery. These paintings that were painted as prayers, as petitions, and many of them were from this plague and that bubonic, that black, and they went back so long in our history to remind me of the reality of pandemics in human species and the reality of faith and the power that's there and the strength of the species, the resilience of the species. So putting all of this into the evolutionary context, it balances my own nervousness and my own fears and my own, the emotional response that there is to so much around me.
So it seems sometimes that we don't see that this evolutionary understanding or the large story that we've lived in our lives. Among our peers, everybody seems to be moving along with this, but for young, I don't realize that young people haven't heard it and don't have the confidence in it that we do, having lived it. And so it seems to me, as I listen to you, that it's both Harry and Carol, that we need to be more just clear about it and articulate about it, and find ways to say over and again, you know, this is part of the flow. This is how things develop, and it will be all right, and we will come through. You can do this. All the things to help younger people navigate what's happening right now is to speak that which we know, which we don't think is that important, but it really is.
Well, I think the greatest spiritual challenge of the pandemic in an evolutionary context is humility, in terms of what is it calling us to open to receive, and to know ourselves as a species, and to know ourselves as vulnerable, and so on. Humility. Get over ourselves to some degree is the same time as, you know, take care of ourselves and the future.
Yeah.
You know, Carol, as I listened to you, I realize I'm really struck by, I don't know what's going to happen. And that makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in 2 months or 6 months or a year. But listening to you, I'm recognizing that what I need to do is to remember that doesn't matter. We can't ever really know. We live with uncertainty, and we kind of know that at this time in our life. What I do know is I need to be kind to the people in my house so that we can get along. And I need to take care of my neighbors, and I need to do those kinds of things that we've been taught, you know, to be kind and loving and compassionate and wise, and just be able to go forth in life without knowing, without the plan, because the plan seems so uncertain. Other than the plan is to be kind to each other and to take care of each other. That's, yeah.
Penny.
Yeah. Lynn, I would love you to say a little bit about how organizationally the climate action and the action network function, and what are the down the road goals at this point?
So Elders Action Network is the organization, the overall organization. Elders Climate Action is one action group, and it's our strongest action group that works on climate action. Elder Climate Action's goal is to change policies while there is still time to affect a more thriving, just future. And its goal, you know, and so it works on policies, it works on legislation, it works on getting voter engagement, on impacting legislation. We can't impact candidates, but we can work with legislation. And to get people out and voting, especially environmentalists. There's a huge number of environmentalists that don't vote. And they might be environmentalists because they like to hunt, or they own land on a creek, but they don't vote. And if we could get environmentalists voting, the turnout might be different. So that's the Environmental Voter Project, which is a big, strong push right now. Of course, the election is a big push now. In Elders Action Network, we are examining different issues around social justice and about sustainable, regenerative living, and also about how do we develop a different consciousness, an evolutionary consciousness? How do we go forth into the future with developing a stronger consciousness of our interrelated nature and of the spiritual basis of life itself? And out of some of those conversations come different sets of actions that people do either collectively or individually. Is that clear enough, Penny? Where are you? You jumped around on my screen. There you are. You jumped from the left to the right. Was that clear enough?
Yes, it's
Great.
quite clear. And then how does one become involved? Is it by local chapters or part of the national group?
Great. So let me put Elders Climate Action in the, oh, why is my chat disabled? Huh, okay. I guess I won't do that. I don't know why chat's disabled. So Elders Climate Action, Elders Action Network, you can find us on the internet. You can sign up with either where it says join or contact, and that will get you to receive a newsletter. Newsletters go out monthly by email. and also e-blasts that tell you about what activities are happening. We are beginning to form local groups. So there's climate action chapters in different regions, and there's elder action circles in different areas. And those are groups of people that get together, and they tend to have different goals. They don't all have the same goal. So there's ways to be engaged locally, and there's ways to be engaged virtually or nationally. We're very good at Zoom conversations.
Great. Thank
Which
you.
is good, because many times people are very isolated. You talk to somebody, the only person in their town that thinks about climate change in Georgia or in, you know, some other place, and you realize how needed it is to be able to develop virtual communities.
Lynn, you used the word nationally. Is it also international or not?
Yeah, absolutely. There are people that join us from, you know, where you might expect people to join us from: Europe, South Africa, Canada, and take part in our webinars and workshops and actions as well. Thanks, Carol.
Could I just say that it looks like everybody's chat has been disabled, so we can't put the links in until that's sorted out.
I'm sorry. I think it's my fault. My son-in-law's computer, I guess, went out of juice, so I had to change to my iPad. And I think maybe since I'm the moderator, that maybe I lost that capacity when yeah. Sorry.
Well.
Did you want to say something, Art? Art, did you want to add something?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I just, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. I love your universe behind you.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I'm somewhere between the earth and the moon looking down on you. It's good reception up here.
Lynn, one time we made a study was made, and actually Penny knows all the details about this, but so I'm telling you what she told me, that creation spirituality people tend to be 90% introverts, reflective people. So, and I was thinking, here was our opportunity to hear from you, the Action Network, and the time action and some action. What can you tell us, or can you help us do get active either as we are, or like get over it and get out of this?
Well, the get over it part's up to you, but there's many ways to be active and get into action. So I want to say, when I talk about the moral voice of an elder, I think we all have a moral voice within us. We all have values that we have learned, and we all have maybe a little bit of tradition or teachings or histories or kind of stories that we know are important. And that it's important to bring those stories forward, those values forward, and share them. So one story I have is I really have stayed out of my children's lives a lot. And my 37-year-old son was coming east to visit, and we were having a family party on a Sunday, and he was saying, but they want me to be back at work. And I just kind of blew it. And I said, you tell them that you need to be with your family. You don't get to be with your family very often, and it's important for you to spend time with your family. And you tell them you're back at work a day later. And I listened to this. I said, who is talking here? Like, that's not my voice. But that was the moral voice of my elder saying, family's important. You know, work's important. You do your work. You're very good about your work, but family's important. And you tell them that this was important. It wasn't just a party. This was important. And so I think we need to bring forth that voice in our conversations. We can bring it forth at our dinner tables. We can bring it forth when we're talking with our kids. At any point when we want to bring forth those stories, it's part of our responsibility, because if we don't bring it forward, they might not hear it. You know, one of the great responsibilities of being a part of being an elder is to create a legacy. You know, there's one of the questions you asked, John, was the difference between just growing old and being an elder. And being an elder takes work. It takes work to grow into being an elder. You don't just grow old. Anybody can grow old. But it takes work to look at your life and say, What have I done? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Why didn't it work? Where have my mistakes been? What did I learn from those mistakes? And that's what makes our lives, that's where we get the wisdom in our life, at looking at, frankly, many times our mistakes and what we wanted, you know, what we could, want, can do differently, and how we did do it differently. So there's a line from this definition of an elder written by Barry Barkin, who you might have heard of. And the line is, an elder is a person who deserves respect and honor, okay? And whose work it is to synthesize wisdom from long life experience and create and formulate this into a legacy for future generations. To synthesize wisdom from long life and formulate a legacy for future generations. And I play with that a lot because I believe that that's the work. Our work is to formulate legacies for future generations so that they can grow on our shoulders. This expanded consciousness that Reb Zalman would talk about. What's the point of our extended lifespan? Is to have an expanded consciousness. So how do we expand our consciousness and use it? And not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of future generations, because we don't just live in this time, in this 60, 70, 80, 90 years. We are part of a long lifespan. We are part of this durative long-term view, this deep time that Joanna Macy talks about. So how do we live into that deep time?
But you're right, there are these tasks of aging that we have to take on, or else old people don't get wise just by being old. They get wise by working on their history and on their values and their love and what, so many different things. Yeah. Then you have a moral voice.
Right, that's true.
So I wonder if we could take just a second here, because sometimes, we turn off our computers and get busy again, to think about our if we synthesized any wisdom, and if we have a legacy, or what we think we might be working on or could start working on.
Good question.
And since we don't have a chat, why don't we just all get out one of those good old Post-it notes, write it on and stick it on a computer so we can see it again. Are there any other questions? I know Penny's going to close us down. Are there any other people who have a question for Lynn?
I think Penny's raising her hand. Art has a Post-it on his head.
Art's got something on his
head. Mine has to do with sort of the thirst of our American culture for the elder, and this interesting dynamic with our presidents being so old, or the presidential candidates, the major ones were over 70.
Right.
And I wondered if you've thought about that. I mean, they don't necessarily represent wisdom, but I do think we, as a culture, we thirst for elder wisdom. And I wondered if you'd thought about it in the political realm at all.
Boy, that's a really interesting question. The political process has been really crazy for me. That's also because I think I don't really understand the vast number of Americans and why they believe the way they believe. And I'm trying to be really delicate because I don't want to insult anybody on this line, on this phone call, that might believe differently than I do. I don't think we choose our presidents based on wisdom. I think that's for sure. Okay. I think that we choose them based on what they might promise us. You know, I do think that we're hungry for some solutions, and we don't live like a wise culture. If we lived like a wise culture, we would live differently. And that's hard to say, because it's not like I don't live wisely, but I do live within a culture or a nation, and my culture and nation is not being so wise. If we were, we wouldn't spray with you know, poisons, or we wouldn't, you know, take out the tops of mountains or poison the water. Like, what are we thinking? And it's very difficult to address all that because it's so systemic and it's so hard to break down. But the question is, we don't choose our presidents based on wisdom. Some of them might be exhibiting some wisdom and values that we want to call forth and we get drawn to. Vision, I mean, especially some of the younger candidates really had a lot of vision. They might not have had the experience, or they might have thought differently than I did, but they're aching for a different kind of a presidency, a different kind of national voice. Yeah, it's very hard. You know, we live in very challenging times. Sometimes I wonder that if elders really had been acting like elders for the last 300-400 years, would we be where we are now? If elders were a functional part of our society and we use them as wisdom keepers, and all those words seem so big, but if we did and we understood that, would we be where we are now? And I don't know.
Thank you.
Before Penny closes us, we wanted to first thank Lynn profusely for spending this hour and a half with us and sharing what your organization does and your wisdom and your ability to put those ideas into action and to call the elder out of each of us. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you. Can I offer one or two more things I'd love to say and I forgot to?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Me. You asked about being an elder and about how to be an activist. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think is very important is to identify as an elder. If I go and I say something in city council meeting because I'm concerned about whatever issue it might be, I can say my name is Lynne Isler and I'm an elder and I've got 5 children and grandchildren. I'm concerned about this issue because of its impact on our community.
That has power, yes.
And so it's so important to claim that voice and to claim that standing in our community so people start to go, oh yeah, we have elders and they seem to be talking for the welfare of all. So that phrase, the welfare of all, I get from the Iroquois community, the Iroquois nation, and I certainly don't want to do any cultural appropriation, but I think we all need to learn from each other when we can, especially the good stuff. And in their covenants, in their great law, that we sit in council and make decisions based on the welfare of all. It's not what benefits my state or my region or my family or me. It's the welfare of all and future generations. And the teaching about thinking about the 7th generation is just that. How do we remember to think about the future generations when we're making decisions? I think I'll stop there. Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk and meet you. It's really lovely to share ideas like this and be in this conversation, and it's so important. Thanks, John.
We will, on the first Thursday of May, our conversation is to hear from different elders about what is going on about climate change in your own community, so that we can hear and know how you're helping support that. Copy from you and do it in our own areas. And Penny Moulis is here today, and she is going to tell us about what's happening in the Eastern Shore of Virginia. Is that right, Penny? I got that location right. So we're really pleased to have.
No, it's southeastern Virginia, Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. Yeah. Okay.
The second most endangered area after New Orleans for tidal rise.
Oh.
Wow.
So we'll look forward to hearing from Penny. We have some other people we're planning to ask, but we'd also like to know if any of you, any place in the country or the nation, in Canada too, of course, have something you'd like to share about how it is affecting you. How is climate change? What are you seeing? What are you doing? If you have, somebody going to say so? If you have an idea, you can go to the, you can reply to the invitation you got to this event. And that actually comes to my mailbox. So then I'll be able to know that you are, that you just thought of something that you could share. And if not, please plan to join us. I see that Sagine has something now on today at 4 o'clock at the same time. I don't know if they've been doing this all the time and we're just becoming aware of each other, or this is arbitrary for them for one event. But we've been doing the first Thursday for 3 or 4 years now. So, so anyway, we plan to stay on the Thursday, and I'll kind of check out what's going on with Sagine International. So we hope you join us then. And thank you, John, for your interview.
Lovely.
It's so wonderful when you interview. And Penny.
Great.
Andrews, please give us the meaning to send us forward.
All right. Dina Metzger has some beautiful poetry. Matt Fox in his meditation recently referenced one that she made, Now That We Know, I think it's called. I highly recommend you look it up. It's a powerful piece. But this is kind of weaving John's notion of the mystic and Carol's idea of humility, and what this point in time represents for all of us. So again, just with gratitude for our monthly coming together and what has now become a number of familiar faces and the new faces that find their way here. It is a joy. I'll speak for myself, but I think I'm saying it for also John and Gail. This has become a great joy and a very meaningful project that we do together. And so in this time of great change and living differently, here are Dina's words to usher us out today. Let us learn the secret language of light again. Also the letters of the dark. Learn the flight patterns of birds, the syllables of wolf howl and bird song, the moving pantomime of branch and leaf, valleys and peaks of whale calls, the long sentences of ants moving in unison, the combinations and recombinations of clouds, the codices of stars. Let us thus reconstitute the world, sign by sign and melody by melody. Let us sing the world back into the very heart of the holy name of God. So with much gratitude.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank everyone for coming.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.